What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JaR. JaR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe.
And Amy.
Review. And we're here this week to talk about the new story. It's the last story before the pre-release. So depending on when you're watching this is going to go up on Thursday. Pre-release videos are going up technically Saturday because it's going to be Friday at midnight. But whatever. We have a lot of videos coming out this weekend for pre-release. I'm super excited. The set looks incredible. The experience looks incredible. We hope that you guys can go watch some of those videos, enjoy them, check them out. You can subscribe down below. Depending on when you're watching this, you'll see those videos come up. On release weekend, we'll have more stuff coming out as well of us opening product, doing it the Vorthos way, showing off our hashtag Vorthos Pride while doing that. So you should definitely check that out. That's a shameless plug. But this week, we are here to talk about, on JaR at least, we're here to talk about Born of Aether. Yes. Now, I have to say, I had to think about that a lot, and you saw me kind of thinking about it. I'm so used to saying Aether. So used to, and I know I'm not the only one. I know I'm not, and I'm sure in the videos, the pre-release kit openings and things like that, if you've seen them, I'm sure I stumble over it a ton. But anyway, on with this story.
Well, but it's not as if people don't know what you mean when you say that.
So, Born of Aether, great. So cool. I appreciated the story a lot. I also appreciated the way that they basically introduced a new race of people to us. And they were able to do it in a way that wasn't boring and a waste of our time. Right. Because there have been some stories in the past, and I can't. You know what, the Gitrog monster story, for example. While good, I don't want you to get mad at me. Look at that face. I knew it. I knew it immediately. The Gitrog monster story was very cool. In the grand scheme of the entire story of Shadows over Innistrad, it was purposeless. To the point of
except for to make me fall in love.
It didn't do anything for us.
Oh, it did something for me.
Wow. Okay, well, we can agree to disagree then. You guys let us know what you think in the comments down below, as always. But that's my opinion, right? It didn't do anything to further the rest of the story or to continue the story. And when this story began, I was like a little worried, right? Because they were introducing all these new characters to us. Yahenni was the main character of this story, and because the Aether-Born, which is the race that we were introduced to today, Born of Aether, Aether-Born. Yahenni is an Aether-Born. Aether-Born are agendered, so they are not a specific gender, which is why it was a little weird, because there were times in the story where the word there was used, T-H-E-I-R there, and it was hard to tell whether Yahenni was referencing himself, or like whether he was being referenced, whether a group was being referenced, or whether one single person was, because you don't want to call them it, because that's rude, but you also can't say he or she, so the pronouns were getting mixed up a little bit, which is fine. I liked what they did. I
didn't feel I had an issue with it.
Well, okay. Fair enough. I mean, maybe it's a visual thing with me, because I read them out and Amy just listens, but regardless, it was interesting, right? I liked the way they did it. It was not, again, you know, when you talk about inclusion and you talk about differences in people and things like that, you never want it to beat you over the head, right? Because then it's like super obvious, and this, I don't think, did that.
No.
And so for that, I thought it was great. They did talk about it a couple of weeks ago when they were talking about the Aether-Born, and they said they are agender. I think it's really cool. I also think it's very interesting that they were able to take a story, and this story had Ovia Pashiri. Is that her name? I wrote it down. Yeah, Ovia Pashiri was in this story. Nissa was in this story. Yes. Chandra was in this story. Like, well, they gave us relatively main characters. Obviously, Nissa and Chandra are main characters. Ovia, relatively main character, as we are now seeing. They talked about Pia Nalar quite a bit as well. They talked about the consulate a lot. I want to touch on that more in a minute. But they also gave us Yahenni. They also gave us...
I'd rather touch on Nissa, but...
Wow. We're just throwing all this in there now,
yep.
aren't we? Okay. So we saw Yahenni, we saw Depola. I wrote these down because I want to make sure I remember these names. Or Depala. See, I already got it wrong. We saw Depala, who is a card who is depicted. We saw Yahenni, who isn't technically depicted in a card, but there are a lot of Aether-Born. I almost did it. A lot of Aether-Born depicted in cards. I loved the description that they gave of that one Aether-Born whose life was ending in the bathroom, and then they showed the picture for Die Young.
Yeah.
How incredible is that?
Awesome.
And you know, well, and I was just going to say, we talked a couple of episodes ago, which you guys can go check out. I'm sure I had the link to either the playlist or the previous episode linked up above at some point. You guys should definitely go check that out because, you know, if you like this kind of thing, we've done a lot of them, and so definitely go check it out.
We've done a lot of them.
We've done a lot of them, and yet loved everyone.
Yeah. Well.
We've loved making the videos. We haven't necessarily loved every story that we've reviewed, but that's the whole point, right? If it was otherwise, then it would be Joe and Amy gush over the stories as opposed to Joe and Amy review the stories. So anyway,
that's mostly what happens anyway.
Right. But that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And when there is something negative to be said, we will say it. You know, we're not going to shy away from it.
I'll definitely say it.
So I loved the. We had asked a couple of weeks ago. That's where I was going with this. That I had said at least. That I really was hoping that they would get to a heartwarming story. Especially with Pia and Chandra kind of reuniting as mother and daughter who hadn't seen each other for a long time. They each thought the other one was dead. I really wanted that cathartic reunion card to be either its own story or a piece of a story. And I think with this one... This story was written by Alison Lures, if I didn't mention that earlier. Awesome job, Alison. Thank you. But this shows, in my opinion, that magic stories can do emotion. They can do, you know, tearjerker moments. Because they didn't even give that Aether-Born a name. The one who died. And you were sad that he died, or that it died, excuse me. You were sad that it died because it was so emotional. And the fact that, yes, you had the anchor point of Yahenni, who you had already met as a character, and Yahenni was kind of realizing its own mortality, and realizing that it was coming to the end of its own life as well. And that's tough, right? And while I would say the supermajority, in my opinion, I don't know the stats on this, but in my opinion, the supermajority of Magic players are probably not of an age where their mortality is something that should be constantly weighing on their mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I've been to a lot of local game stores and I haven't seen that many seasoned or mature, like super mature players. I'm sure there are some. Yes, and that's the other thing, right? You hear cool stories about that all the time where somebody who is not necessarily doing very well health-wise will be able to go to a tournament and experience those things, and that's always amazing to hear those stories. And regardless, I'm just saying, like, it's still something that is relatively relatable, even though we're not at the twilight of our lives. You know, you can still kind of feel for Yahenni in saying it when it says, you know, I'm nearing the end of my life and I want to go out on my own terms. I loved that moment where Yahenni looked at the Aether-Born that was dying and said, did you live a good life, or did you live it to its fullest? And, like, you know, Yahenni was saying that the other Aether-Born could barely get the words out, but the last thing the Aether-Born said was, you bet your ass I did. Like, just so cool. And the fact that this story did a great job of bridging the gap between Pia getting captured by the consulate and and Chandra and Nissa and Ovia being able to find out where she is and try to go break her out. And she's in the Dund prison, and we've seen, at least since, you know, all of Kaladesh has been spoiled at this point. There are certain cards that refer to Dund. I believe Dund Operative is one of the cards. Haven't seen them all yet, so... Well, I mean, haven't held it in my hand. But, yeah, Dund Operative, I believe, is one of the cards. And so they do refer to Dund as an area within the cards themselves. So I think that's great. I also, again, I appreciated the fact that they introduced a whole new race to us. And I think that they did it in a very smart way. Because they didn't beat you over the head with exposition right in the beginning and kind of overload it. They gave you a little taste of who Yahenni was. They showed it interacting with its friends, with its partygoers, talking about the party itself, and then they introduced the main characters in Ovia, Nissa, Chandra. And then you got to see Yahenni and how Yahenni, because this was all from Yahenni's perspective, you got to see how Yahenni interacted with all of these main characters who we already know. Which I
loved.
Yes.
Because you got to see how cool Yahenni is.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I think, my opinion, the coolest moment that Yahenni had, and it was an important part of the story, possibly my favorite part of the story, was during the death of that Aether-Born, and then immediately following it, the Aether-Born was in a bathroom, locked in a bathroom because there was a consulate soldier chasing it to bring it back to jail.
Yeah.
And it was trying to, I mean, it was very much dying. And Yahenni, after the Aether-Born died, and Yahenni held that Aether-Born in its hands as it died, it saw that there was paperwork there showing the charges against the now dead Aether-Born, and it was like petty theft. And Yahenni said it didn't even deserve to be taken to jail for this. And yet this consulate soldier came into Yahenni's home, threatened Yahenni with, shutting down the entire party and trying to be like, well, if you don't let me in this bathroom or if you try to kick me out, I'm going to say that your party's too noisy and you're going to get picked up for a noise violation and your party's going to be shut down. And Yahenni said, I have no doubts that this consulate soldier would do that.
Right.
And so Yahenni's response was, hey, maybe this was the way, because we questioned it. And the cards kind of show you that, but I wanted to see it in the story. This is really where you find out, truthfully, that the consulate are not good people.
Right.
Because you kind of guessed it with the stories leading up to it, but they never expressly told you that. Again, the cards definitely told you that, especially now that all the story spotlight stuff has been revealed. But yeah, now that you get the perspective of Yahenni in saying, yeah, they're not good people, I hate the things that they do, and a little bit of kind of seeing the kinds of things that the consulate chooses to spend their time on and exert their power over, now you can see it a little bit better. Because, you know what, even from the story spotlight cards, at least the last one, talks about the confiscation coup where Tezzeret, it seems that Tezzeret is capturing all or stealing all of the inventors' inventions and saying, and the mechanized soldiers, I forget what they're called, but the kind of the constructs that are in charge are stealing all these things and saying, head judge Tezzeret needs this. And so originally it was like, well, I don't know if this is the consulate doing this or if this is just Tezzeret doing this, but from the looks of it, even if the consulate isn't necessarily part of the confiscation coup from the Inventors Fair, the consulate is not, their hands are not clean here.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty messed up.
Yes.
For you to invite, or not even have to invite, because
it's so popular, yeah.
It's just so entrenched, ingrained into the culture of this plane.
Yep.
To have such a big fair, basically, is what it is, for inventions, and then just to kind of swoop in and steal them all, like blatantly steal them all.
Well, and that,
or not them all, but
it may be them all, but to be honest, that may have been the intent of this fair in the first place.
I'm not suggesting it wasn't.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm not suggesting it wasn't.
Okay.
But the point is, this is a fair. It's supposed to be a fun event. and it's so much a part of the culture of the plane that it's not even the kind of thing that if people had heard that this is what the consulate was planning on doing ahead of time, that they would have said, oh, well, we're not going.
Right.
You know, they still probably would have went, or a lot of people still probably would have went, and then gotten their invention stolen.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, I don't know. It just, I mean, it, like you said, it really cements the fact that the consulate is, you know, a bunch of jerks.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll see how that works with Dovin Baan, with Padim, kind of these characters that we've already seen, and... You know, Dovin Baan did not present originally, nor did Padim, as a villain of any kind, at least kind of expressly. You know, it would, and I always talk about this, I prefer kind of being beaten over the head with it a little bit more, and Dovin was not like that. It was kind of, you know, he's aware of, or he has the ability to see the flaw in anything just by kind of looking at it.
Right.
And... which is a really cool power. There's somebody in Marvel Comics, one of the Inhumans, who has that ability as well. Karnak, I believe. Which is fantastic. I love that. That's so cool to me. So I like to see that that's now a Planeswalker has that ability as well. It's a cool power, you know. But yeah, we'll see where that goes with Dovin and Padim especially, because they're both cards in this set. Padim and Dovin. Dovin's a Planeswalker, Padim, legendary creature. But we shall see where they go in the future stories and how characters like Rashmi and Saheeli deal with maybe the confiscation coup, or you know, if and when we see them again. But yeah, I thought this story was great. I thought that it did a great job of getting you nervous about what's coming up next, because even Yahenni says, when Pia is first mentioned, Yahenni says, oh, the most dangerous person on Kaladesh, or in Girapur, or whatever it is that I believe I said he earlier. The thing that Yahenni says is that Pia is the most dangerous person on Kaladesh, essentially. And then to find out what prison Pia is in, and when Yahenni mentions that to Ovia Pashiri, Ovia's response is, "Oh my God, not that one! That one's the worst." And Baral,
of course,
and, well,
like, of course they're gonna put her in the worst. I mean,
and it's the worst because Baral's there. It's the worst because Baral is the one who I really hope is in Aether Revolt. I really hope, because I think that'd be a really cool card. You see him in that card whose name I'm not gonna remember, but it was from the other week. They showed it to us where he's like taking off his mask and he's like burnt on one side thanks to Chandra, and his like face is glowing, or the mask is glowing, which is amazing. Like, it looks so good.
Beautiful.
I'm genuinely.
It's not supposed to necessarily be beautiful.
No, I agree it's beautiful. And I hope that he is a card in the next set, and I hope that I'm almost certain we will see that confrontation at some point, either in this story or in the Aether Revolt story, because that's just, again, we're talking about the continuation and possibly the kind of capping off of Chandra's story arc, and that would be the way to do it, would be to come up to Baral, and when she would have to determine, do I kill him in cold blood, like I'm sure Liliana will be telling her to do, because she already has, burn him to cinders was, I believe, something that Liliana said, or will she go with what I'm sure Nissa will be saying to her, which is, just... let's capture him, let's, we'll do whatever, not kill him, but, yeah, we'll see where that goes. A question that I had today, since I brought up Nissa and Liliana, Nissa, interestingly, seemed very willing to knock this consulate guard out and, like, attack him.
Yeah,
that
surprised me.
Yeah, me too. It seemed a little bit outside of her and her personality. I did
it was just because Yahenni asked her to, and she was flirting with that person.
I think it was the other way around. I think Yahenni was flirting with Nissa, But I don't, and originally I don't think Nissa, well, first of all, originally I don't think Nissa got that Yahenni was flirting.
Well, yeah.
And then eventually Nissa did, and I don't know how well Nissa did at reciprocating the flirting, but...
Well, she did by, like, saying she'd knock out the guard.
Yeah, and she was like, oh, absolutely, and, like, went over and just, you know, she, like, animated the houseplant, and the houseplant, like, attacked him and knocked him over or whatever. That was a very interesting kind of interaction between Yahenni and Nissa.
Yeah, it was almost, like, sitcom-esque.
Yeah, just like, hey, you know, and like sidling up and like being a little creepy.
And they like get the houseplant going.
Yeah. But my other question was, where did Liliana go? I don't know that was explained.
She's just like missing.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny because I believe the next story spotlight that we have to talk about is Deadlock Trap, which depicts, at least in the art, Nissa and Chandra trapped. And my question in that art was, where's Liliana? Well, now I get to ask it before that happens.
Yeah.
I'm like, where the hell did Liliana go?
Because guess we'll find out next story.
Well, and I don't know, you know, well, hopefully, yeah, maybe. I just don't know, you know, did Liliana and Tezzeret still just, like, glaring at each other outside? Like, I don't know, you know, what ended up happening. And, well, hopefully they'll explain that to us, and it won't just be like...
either fighting or... Liliana tried to make herself sparse.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like she would...
Because Tezzeret was there.
I feel like she would stand out, though.
A little bit.
Like, you could try to make yourself sparse, but I feel like she'd stand out. Although, I guess, since Tezzeret was walking around in the robes and Liliana was the only one who noticed him, then maybe she could try to hide out a little bit. But...
I mean, she's on Kaladesh. Maybe there are other people with, like, big metal headdresses on, you know? Maybe that's...
Maybe.
They're in Kaladesh.
Yeah, but in,
that's, like, maybe a possibility there.
But in, like, a super purple...
anywhere else.
Yeah, and I guess maybe in a super purple dress, like, there's, like, colorful stuff everywhere. Who knows? But, yeah, we'll have to see what happens with Liliana. We'll have to see what happens. I'm super excited that Ajani is coming. I love me some Ajani.
Gonna cry.
I love Ajani. How do you not love Ajani? What a great character. And I want to see how they handle Ajani with this new storytelling. I want to see Ajani interact with the Gatewatch with this new story. I mean, that's always been my thing. If you're a loyal JAR viewer, you know I love character interactions. I love seeing them interact with each other. It's absolutely fantastic. So...
I just loved the character interactions, just every aspect of them in this story. I thought it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Yahenni was fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, it was just done so well.
Like, I just loved the confidence that Yahenni had. Like, you're 3. Well, you're like almost 4.
Yeah.
And
because he's got like 50-something days left,
like,
or 45
just
or whatever.
the coolest. Like, you're so smooth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, I want to be like that.
Well, you're past 3 or 4 though. So
I know.
You've lost it. Those days are behind you. Yeah, those days are behind you. Yeah, no, and like I said, it kind of at the beginning of this, it was a great way to introduce us to a new race of people. They kind of made a big deal out of it at PAX. They being Wizards of the Coast made a big deal out of it at PAX in terms of, this is a new race, we want to introduce them to you. There are, you know, interestingly, there are certain situations where they will allow the cards to tell a story, and then certain situations where they will actually put things into the story. And I don't know that I necessarily... I didn't know until I read this story that I wanted to know about the Aether-Born. Now that I've read the story, I can't turn around and say, oh, I didn't need that, because I loved it. It was great, and it worked out super well, and Yahenni was able to describe what the Aether-Born were by talking to Nissa. And that's a really good storytelling tactic, because it's not Yahenni talking to...
I'm reading a textbook to find out the information that I need to know about this new race. Right.
Either that, or Yahenni saying something to... Gonna look it up again. Depala, right? Yeah, Depala would know about Yahenni and would know about Yahenni's race, and I was afraid that that was what was going to happen in the beginning, is that Yahenni would be talking to Depala, who they admit they're friends, and Depala would just be saying to Nahini, oh, well, you know that you only have 50-something more days to live, and this is, you know, you will eventually just go back into being ether again, and, like, obviously Yahenni knows that, obviously Depala knows Yahenni knows that, so there's no reason for it.
Stupid for that dialogue to happen,
and yet,
so it makes a lot more sense for it to happen to Nissa as someone who doesn't understand any of this.
Yeah. And it was done within a super cool, slightly flirtatious interaction between the two. Like, it worked out super well. So
slightly?
Awkwardly.
I didn't think it was awkward.
I thought it was a little awkward. Anyway.
They legit said it was awkward, but until that point, I didn't feel like it was.
All right. Well, and again, Yahenni's pretty smooth, so there you go.
That's my point.
So
maybe I'm just jealous because I would want to be that smooth because I love Nissa so much.
Yeah, and you would want to be that smooth with Nissa. Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, if you haven't read this story, she's mad at you.
Do it.
But you should definitely do it. I mean, if that's a question in terms of JAR, since it's a review, I definitely recommend this story. Amy definitely recommends this story. So
yeah, I just loved everything about it.
It was great.
But again, I'm a total Nissa fan, so I love any story that says anything good about Nissa. So.
Well, and you know what? Honestly,
I'm
they
partial.
didn't. And none of the. I mean, Yahenni was clearly, obviously, very heavily featured. None of the other characters were greatly featured. I think Nissa was the second most talked about, besides maybe Pia. You know, like, that's just kind of how it worked. It worked out super well. I think it was great. I think that moment, that takeaway moment where Yahenni steps in the bathroom and sees that other Aether-Born dying was just absolutely perfect. The best part of this story, in my opinion, was that, followed by kind of Yahenni's resolve of, you know, maybe I go out there and maybe I could decide to drain some of these people that don't deserve to be alive, and I could keep myself alive, and we'll see if Yahenni comes back up and if Yahenni does decide to do that, because in the beginning Yahenni was like, yeah, I could do that, but I don't want to. You know, that's not right. I'm not going to drain someone to live longer. That's not okay. And then at the end he was like, but the consulate are bad people, so maybe I could just do it to the consulate. They don't deserve to live. They're not good people. But I probably won't do it. So we'll see if that temptation takes over at any point,
or
if
like
they show that to us.
There to say, hey, like, that's wrong, please don't do it.
Which would be cool, because then you get to see Nissa interacting with him, possibly at the end of its life. There are different options there, and we'll see.
I think that would be so cool.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Alison Lure's fantastic job, just absolutely beautiful work. So I'm going to stop talking, because on Friday, for the pre-release, I got to talk a lot, because I'm going to be opening cards, and I'm going to be talking about them, and it's going to be amazing, and you should definitely go check it out by describe down below what you want to see. No, also subscribe down below. You can talk to us in the comments. You can check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Those links are down in the description.
Show off your hashtag #VorthosPride.
She beat me to it. I was just going to say, yes, show off your hashtag #VorthosPride however you can, whenever you can. Let us know what you think of Kaladesh, what you thought of this story, what you thought of this video in the comments down below. Again, on Facebook, Twitter.
Pretty much anything.
Anything at all. Anything. The sky, the ground. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. From the Geek for All YouTube channel, I've been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.